Okay, so our presenters today are George Milliken, who is the Development Officer for Digital Learning and Teaching, myself, Julie Jamieson, Education Officer for Literacy and English, and we're also joined today by Helen Fairley and Paul Morgan, who are Senior Education Officers for Literacy and English. What can you expect to see over the next 3 sessions? So we're hoping there'll be some key messages from research on literacy and digital learning. There'll be some demonstrations from George about digital tools which can support literacy in English. We'll also signpost further digital tools which could be helpful that we might not be able to cover during the session, but we'll be able to show you for future reference. And George is also here to provide that practical advice around digital learning and teaching. There'll be an opportunity to share and develop ideas by networking with colleagues as well. So the webinar will consist of a series of 3 sessions. The first 2 sessions will be a tutorial style with examples of how aspects of listening, talking, reading and writing can be developed through digital learning. The third session will be interactive, allowing participants to share their own examples of practice or bring along an idea which they'd like to develop through group discussion. Sessions 1 and 2 will be recorded so that you can revisit or even share the webinar with your colleagues. Each session will take place on the same Teams site as we're in today. Participants are very welcome to use this site to share practice over the course of the 3 webinar sessions, either by posting in the conversation or uploading examples to the file section.
Yeah, and just from my point and the digital learning and teaching side of it, it's really important that we feel we get that message across about cyber resilience and internet safety, that just as we wouldn't let learners and children and young people near a road without talking about road safety, when we are talking about online or digital learning, and there's that connected nature of the internet, that we ensure that young people are also learning about staying safe. So that's something to consider when you are planning about using examples that we might look at today, such as Teams or Word Online, that we are thinking about how we support our young people with that to stay safe and to use it responsibly. And our DigiLearnScot website has a page on cyber resilience and internet safety with some examples that might prove useful to you there.
So we're going to explore some of the research around literacy and digital learning, highlighting some of the potential benefits they have, but also the areas that we need to consider. And we're going to begin today by reflecting upon the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has had upon our experience of digital learning. So we'd like you to consider this question and record your thoughts in the chat box. So why is it important at this moment in time to consider how digital learning can support literacy in English? So we're just going to give you a minute or 2 just to record some of your thoughts in the chat box. Why are we looking at this now?
See, Mrs. Stein's kicked us off there, blended learning. Coming in thick and fast now.
Helen, absolutely.
Yep.
Like a ticker tape.
This is a good one, Nicola MacDonald, taking forward the progress made during lockdown with using digital platforms and considering blended learning.
Miss Patterson, learning is being shared online and pupils are responding to tasks to display their achievements through written communication.
Andrea's talking less paper usage. True, we could go paperless. Children, really important there from Mrs. Devine, children are isolating at home.
Miss Campbell, need to be digitally literate for an ever-changing world and more use of varying digital platforms. Engagement, Mrs. Brown, being able to engage more with more children, keeping the children connected if they have to self-isolate, Mrs. Scott. Thank you for all these.
One more, useful in is this might be the one that you've just read, Paul, useful in addressing the attainment gap.
No, I hadn't read that, but that's
That's Miss Scott, particularly learning loss from the pandemic, as well as those pupils who aren't back at school yet due to self-isolation. Helping to involve parents as well.
Absolutely. DYW, great point. Short and sweet.
There's a point there about, from Gail Sterling, about inequality of opportunity.
Absolutely.
Big range there then, Julie and George.
Thank you. I think it was just important that at the very start of this session, we really think about why it's so important to us now more than ever. So it's a really good way to start and really valid points.
Yeah, absolutely, and great to see so many people mention obviously the digital learning and teaching aspect of that as well, from my own point there. With the next point, if we move on with that, is again considering the role that digital learning and teaching has. We've got a short extract here from a video that was produced for the National Framework for Digital Literacies and Initial Teacher Education, and we think the message is on point with just what we're talking about today. And so we've got a clip from Derek Robertson from the University of Dundee exploring just that pace of change. So give me a sec to switch the video window here.
It's really important also that when we think about digital technologies, we need to acknowledge the pace of change over the past, 20, 25 years? Well, since I started teaching anyway. For those of you who remember, this is a modem. It's a 56k modem, and that meant back in 1995-96, the speed at which my web pages loaded, they increased slightly. And it meant that I could make a cup of tea, and by the time I came back, the web page I was wanting to view might have appeared. And that's how slow it was. Nowadays, it's amazing what we have in terms of the range of devices, the software we have, the connectivity. We have Alexa at home now, and so many of us just ask it to do things for us. We've also got smart homes such as Hive for heating, etc. Got amazing communication devices. We have the phones in our pockets. Incredible things like Google Translate that allow us to communicate almost instantaneously with anybody in another language. We've got fabulous things such as in the games world, such as Minecraft, where young learners can build the most amazing structures and then wire them up with their own online redstone, which is electricity basically. It's incredible what we have at our fingertips. However, there are still questions about the impact of the technologies that we have at our fingertips on attainment and on teaching and learning. You know, in the recent Scottish Government's digital literacy strategy, it was stating that there's still a commonly held assertion that despite the pervasive nature of digital technology, its benefits are not always fully felt within our education establishments.
So Derek Robertson there raises an interesting point that despite the potential impacts of the technology that we have at our fingertips, its benefits are not fully felt in our educational establishments yet. And what we want to consider is how we can capitalise on the benefits, especially due to the significant increase of digital technology as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we saw a lot of people going to digital technology where perhaps they hadn't already, and those who were using it were using it more regularly. One of the ones, and I think Derek hits on it in that statement there, is, and we saw some of the examples that come in the chat pane just a moment ago, that it's one thing, we certainly have a generation or generations of digital consumers at the moment, people who access websites, content online, video on demand, they play games, but what we are looking for is a nation of people who are digital creators, and we want our young people to develop into people who design games, films, online content, websites, and all the other things that we'll use in our digital world. And that's something we'll look at in the following webinar, about how we get our young people to create content as well as just consuming it. I'm just going to give you a moment to read this quote from the UK Literacy Association. And again, if you've not finished reading it, we'll share the slides with you, and you can take your time to really go through that and consider what it's saying. You can see the link to the document at the bottom of the screen as well there. But this statement reminds us to consider the equity of the digital media experience that children bring with them to school, Again, similar to what Derek's saying, that we have learners coming with their own knowledge and experience from their own lives and bringing that to school. And if we're to equip children with the skills to support the learning in a rapidly changing digital landscape, we need to consider that we need to understand their interests and experiences. Derek mentioned in the clip the importance of empowering our learners, and as I've just said there about, we want our learners to become digital creators and not just consumers. We want them to be able to build and make their own experiences to share online. And many of our learners are already able to do that before they come into school, so it's about embracing that and making that work for our learners. But we do have to remember, and again we saw that in the chat page just a moment ago, a few people saying about how we can use digital technology to make learning more equitable, but we also need to consider some of the challenges around equity. Not all families will have access to a good connectivity or digital devices at home, and we need to consider that, and as Derek says in the video clip there, recognising the digital divide that might be because of that. And also, again, in my own experience, we sometimes see learners who might have all the digital devices and gadgets in the world, but if they don't have that value of being a digital creator, then they don't necessarily have the same skills as someone who, even though they don't have the same access to the device, might have more skills in that area.
Thanks, George. The National Literacy Trust carried out some research on teachers' use of technology to support literacy in 2018. The research group identified these main benefits of using technology to support literacy. They found that regardless of the hardware they had access to, most teachers thought positively about the potential for technology to support children's learning. The majority considered the ability to engage and enable the pupils to be the principal benefit of using technology in the classroom. You'll notice, however, that assessing and providing evidence of pupil progress are not as well recognised as a benefit. We could consider how to have a greater focus on these areas in response to the increased amount of learning online that's taken place over the last 6 months. Perhaps considering how we can use digital technology to support us to provide evidence of progress or give feedback on children's learning may be areas that you'd like to look at further in session 3. And George will also demonstrate some examples of this later in the session. The research group were also asked about their perceptions of the impact of technology on particular pupils or groups of pupils. Technology was seen by most respondents to have a positive impact on reluctant readers and boys, followed by reluctant writers and less able readers and writers. This emphasises the potential of digital learning to support learners who may be reluctant to read or write, as well as those who find these areas more challenging. It's also worth noting the potential benefits of using digital tools to support children with additional support needs. However, it's important to highlight here that these are teachers' perceptions, and as such they can be seen as subjective. In relation to gender in particular, it would be very important to consider whether unconscious bias has influenced their responses or if there's any evidence to confirm these differences. The Literacy Trust research emphasises the positive benefits of digital technologies, but then it goes on to raise an important point about how we use these to support effective pedagogy in literacy and English. They suggest that the positive findings were less related to the use of technology itself and more to how well it was employed. It's therefore very important that we align the use of technology to our planned learning outcomes for learning and teaching.
Absolutely. The text on the screens come from the Education Endowment Foundation, and there's evidence, the evidence summary for digital technology. And what they've done is they've explored some of that research around the use of digital technology to support learning in schools, and they've created 5 considerations that you can see there on the screen as a response. And as Julie was saying in the last part there, that it's not just about having the technology, it's about how it is used. So the first point there is emphasising the need for a clear understanding of how the technology will improve learning and teaching interactions. The second, that we should be aware that the technology alone doesn't automatically lead to increased attainment, so it's not enough to just put the devices in there. the third point that we should consider how new technology will support pupils to work harder for longer or more efficiently to improve their learning. So what is it that it's doing to improve that learning? And number 4 is a reminder that the motivation to use new technologies is not enough, and we need to make sure that the use of the technology and the desired learning outcomes are closely aligned. So there is always a wee boost there that sometimes when you're doing something novel that learners engage with it just because it is new, but that can't be the reason, because very quickly that will stop being a new piece of technology. And the last point is just emphasising that the training should support teachers to understand how technology can be used for learning, and that's hopefully what we're going to cover some of today. We're going to look more closely at how the digital tools can then support parts of the literacy and English curriculum, starting with enjoyment and choice. And the description for this organiser is, within a motivating and challenging environment, developing an awareness of the relevancies of text in my life. So I'll pass back over.
Okay, so how can we use texts which are relevant to the lives of children and young people? Please take a moment to read this quote from the UK Literacy Association. So as George said earlier, if you didn't get a chance to finish it, we'll make the slides available if you want to come back and revisit this. This quote recognises the rapid pace of change to literacy practices in response to the digital world we live in. It talks about the emergence of literacy practice related to social media, gaming and other online activity, and how this has led to those increased opportunities for children and young people to make and publish their own online text. This has demonstrated the ease with which children and young people can produce, edit, remix, post and share content online. We're going to stop at this stage just to think about what do we mean by text. So if we could take a moment just to think about the last 24 hours, what are some of the texts you've engaged with? Please type your suggestions that you have into the chat box. So thinking about the last 24 hours, what are some of the texts that you've engaged with?
Paul and I are just watching them coming in. Such a range. So a lot of online stuff.
Yeah.
Blog posts, social media.
News feeds.
Recipes.
Recipes online. That's a good one.
Mrs. Vass has been doing a shopping list. That's a good wee reminder for me.
Twitter, of course.
Netflix. Coming up here.
And somebody is reminding us that it's possible to read a novel. Thank you for that.
Children, adult novels, newspaper, research article. Mrs. Dow's had a busy week. Letter.
Story.
Closed captions on TV programmes. That's an interesting area to explore, Mrs. Callaghan, as well. And Mrs. Inkster's been studying the takeaway menu. Quite good idea after a webinar, Twilight. So, yeah. What do you think of that range, George and Julie?
It's really interesting, actually. Lots and lots of digital, which, you know, it just really shows how prevalent it is for us all now in everyday life, isn't it? Be interesting to compare that to what text we use in schools and to what extent, you know, what the balance is between digital in classrooms. If George could just pop us back into the presentation, if that's okay, we can go on and explore text a little bit more. So here is the definition of text provided in the Literacy and English paper, Principles and Practice. You can see that within there's a very wide range of texts, including films, games, television programmes, blogs, text, social media and web pages. It's worth noting that the Principles and Practice paper is now 10 years old, and even since then there's been a rapid increase of technology over this period. However, this list does remind us of the importance of providing children with those rich opportunities to explore digital text.
Yeah, and it's fantastic to see in the answers that were put into the chat there that you're all obviously the sort of educators that are considering that choice of text, and the fact that it is a medium through which the ideas can be communicated. So it's worth considering, what choice are we giving learners in our classrooms and learning environments, and does it reflect what we've just shared there in the chat? Also worth considering, how many of those texts reflect learners' interests, and obviously the answers that you provided clearly reflected some of your interests, such as TV captions or takeaway menus, shopping lists, and or whether that's an essential or something that you enjoy. And I just put up some examples there that we might be familiar with some of these online texts, and it's worth remembering there that YouTube is the overwhelming choice for young people to consume media and to find information. If you're building, as I was, at a garden gate at the weekend, I'm no longer going to find a manual on building a gate. I'm going straight to YouTube, and that's what most young people will certainly be their first port of call for finding information, certainly about how to. It's the second most popular search engine in the world, behind Google, which funnily enough owns YouTube. So Google and Google's YouTube are the two biggest search engines in the world. So again, if people are looking for information, that is where they are finding that, and I think that's something that should reflect on the learning and teaching that we have in our classroom. Also worth considering about the enjoyment part of the enjoyment choice as well, about how we can use these popular forms of media to engage learners and to allow them to create meaningful contextual responses. So again, you might quite often feel that you have reluctant readers that perhaps don't want to pick up a book, a traditional text, as we might do a class novel, for example, but the chances are they're engaging with some form of text like we've just discussed in that list there and through the chat. So how could we use those to engage our learners? We've got a wee short video clip just exploring, but I think we've probably answered most of that already and provided most of those examples. But we'll share the link at the end of the session as well. But it's worth, again, just going back and refreshing our thoughts on what are the texts that we can use in the class and how do we use that to engage our learners. So for me, over to me for this next part, and it's worth, what we want to do is do a wee demonstration now about some of the widely available digital resources to support some aspects of the tools for listening, talking and reading and writing. These are all available through Glow, which you've used to sign into this meeting. I know that local authorities across Scotland, some use more Google than Microsoft Office, but I'm going to stick to Microsoft Office for these examples because it's available to everyone and the tools are all built in. There are similar tools which I'll highlight where they're available with Google, but sometimes they are provided by a third party, so they're not necessarily part of the Glow environment. You'll need to speak to your local authority Glow key contact to make sure that if those are available for yourself. The first tool then, and I hope everybody's just going to nod along that they already know about this tool and use it, but it's my favourite tool in the whole of Glow. It's probably my favourite tool in the whole of digital learning and teaching, and just to make sure that everyone is aware of it and some of the uses for it. So what I've got here is a Word document that I've borrowed from someone, and it's a piece of text here which I could share with my learners, so that the person who's created this has created it for a reading passage, and I want to ask questions for comprehension at the end there. But what I'm really interested in is the difference where if I provide my learner with a text through Word, that some of the tools are built into that. So if I open it up in Word Online, at the top here I have View, and when I select Immersive Reader, it's going to change the appearance of the text. So the first thing you immediately see is it gets rid of a lot of the things that are going on in the screen that aren't to do with the text, and it's just showing you the text alone. It gets rid of pictures, the toolbar at the top of Word, for example, and if I go in here, I can change the size, the font, it can change the background colour, which can be really useful for learners with dyslexia or other visual stress or support needs. So that can be really handy there. But in terms of literacy in English, I think the biggest part to it is, and I just want to turn off the syllables there, which could be useful but might be distracting just now. The fact
a book. In this book, not only is there no happy ending, there is no happy beginning and very few happy things in the middle.
So there's some options you can see there for learners. They can change the speed that the text is read and whether it's a male or female voice. So just immediately for providing that tool for learners, if you're giving them the page that you'd like them to read in Word online, they can access it with Immersive Reader and they can have it read to them, which immediately removes the barrier of having to be able to read the text to understand it. And if they can have the text read to them, then that can support them. Also, if I'm a more confident learner and I'm quite happy to read the text that I'm given, still using Immersive Reader might be useful if I have an unfamiliar word, so I can just have it read one word to me.
Interested.
So if it's just the one word that I'm stuck with, I can quickly open up Immersive Reader and have that word read to me, so that if it doesn't sound the way that it looks, and also you can see here it's got a translate tool built in, so it's currently set to Arabic and it will read that word to me in my chosen language. So it might be again that you've got it might even be older learners a wee bit more confident at reading, but they might find particular parts of the text challenging and they can use that Immersive Reader tool to support it. There's also, if I just turn it back on, there's a picture dictionary tool in here. So again, if you click the word, it will show you an image to represent that. There's obviously a consideration there about where that fits as one of your strategies for making sense of a text and understanding unfamiliar words or vocabulary. It doesn't always show you the picture that's relevant in the context, but it can be quite good at showing, if I can find a relevant one here, it will show me, if you pick the right one, it will show you 2 or 3 pictures for that word. There we go, middle. So it's going to show a couple of different ones to try and help the learner get to the context that is relevant in this situation, but that will depend on the word that you choose. Also along with this, what I'd like to I can't demonstrate it fully online, but if you've got access to a mobile device, the Microsoft Lens app, so you find that in your app store, it's free to download. Once you've downloaded it, you can sign it in. So again, you're going to have to consider the sign in if it's a shared device, such as a school iPad, but learners might be able to use it on their own devices. If they sign in to Glow, it will allow them to use Immersive Reader with the camera on their device. So I've got I've got a PDF of a book here, and what I did earlier is I took a photograph of that with an Office Lens on my iPad, and I could have it read to me just from the photograph. But just to demonstrate how powerful that Office Lens tool is, I told it to send it to Word, so it has sent it to my OneDrive in Glow. It's put a photograph in there that you can see, and what it's automatically done is transcribed the text on the screen so that I can go up to View, Immersive Reader, and have that page read to me. And it will do that all in one go on your mobile device, but just to demonstrate how useful that is, I can take a photograph of any piece of text and have Immersive Reader read that to me using Microsoft Office Lens. So it's free to download, and that really starts to change the way that learners access a text. Other wee bits worth considering as well, if you give a learner a text on Word Online, you've also got your tools built in such as highlighters, so again maybe highlighting keywords in a text and reading around that word for the context and to develop your understanding there. So those tools are built in again, and that's an automatic win there if you're using Word for your digital texts. The next part to consider is then, if that's reading, how we write to a document. And if I start up a new document here, one of the bits I really like as well about using Office Online is you'll notice up at the top of the screen it's always saving, so every keystroke it saves my document, and it saves me losing any of the work that I've done. But really important again, and there are considerations about how you would deploy this in your classroom. I can't imagine you'd have 30 learners all writing with their voice, but if your learners need that tool, you've got the power of the Microsoft Dictate tool here. So the red microphone at the bottom of the screen tells me that it is currently recording me. And when I finish speaking my sentence, if I even tell it full stop, it will hopefully put a full stop in. And it's not picked me up quite there, but you can see it is pretty accurate as long as I take my time and I enunciate full stop. No, it's not going to get full stop for me, but if your learners speak clearly enough, it will put in a full stop. But that might be the difference between your learner being able to put down a couple of sentences to being able to write a whole text of their own using their voice. There's obviously parts again, you can see it's quite good, it capitalises I because it's using spell checker there, but you're obviously going to have to make sure that your learners are still checking that it makes sense and it has any grammar and punctuation in there. So again, it just for me, that tool makes the writing process accessible to so many more learners. And once we've written our text, if I'm just going to copy and paste this just to take me over the 100-word threshold, you'll see as well this is quite a new tool. You've got editor, and what it will do is it's like an advanced spell checker. It will go through your writing and it will give you feedback on spelling, grammar, if you've used acronyms, clarity, your formality. So again, it's part of that toolbox. It's not going to check that the writing is correct, but if you're speaking to your learners about formality and the language that's used, it will pick up any abbreviations and suggest that you write it in full. Again, this is quite a high scoring piece here, but it will give you lots of feedback there that again your learners can use as part of that toolbox for writing and checking that the learning makes sense. The last one, I'm going to stick with the theme of crocodiles. And again, I've borrowed this PowerPoint from someone, but within the listening and talking toolbox, it's worth considering if you've asked learners to practice their talking skills, and perhaps they're going to deliver a presentation about something they've learned. Again, that's great. When we talk about the equity, some learners will go home and they will have adults that live with them who are experienced presenters who deliver presentations as part of their job, or perhaps did that in their studies. But not everyone goes home to that. Some learners again won't go home to an adult who has time to spend with them to hear them practicing. Or again, it might be that it's just about needing a critical friend, and you ask your dad, how was my presentation, and he'll tell you it was great because he doesn't want to break their heart with any feedback. So there is a tool built in here, and if I go up to slideshow on PowerPoint online, you'll see there's this option to rehearse with a coach. So what it's going to do is I've already given it permission to hear my microphone, so it's going to show me feedback as I go. You can turn that off in case that's distracting. And what I'm just going to do is take a wee moment to read these slides to you, and you'll see some of the feedback it provides for me. Where do crocodiles live? Do crocodiles live in the desert? No. Do crocodiles live in the snow? Do crocodiles live in the mountains? So you can see there it's telling me I'm using too many fillers. And if I speak really slowly just for a moment, you'll see that in a wee second, the feedback. But do crocodiles live near swamps and rivers? Yes. Crocodiles live in Africa, Australia and South America. Crocodiles can move and live on land, but they do need to be close to the water. They like swamps, and you can see here, PowerPoint's actually telling me to stop reading the slides, which is something we would always ask learners to do, that the presentation is there to support them, but not to be read from. Once you finish that, what it does, it creates this summary report here. So you can see here the pace that I've read at and my average pace over time. So at this point here, my pace has dipped, and that might indicate that that's a part I need to practice, because I've really slowed down here at this point. Maybe I don't know what I'm speaking about and I need to go away and practice that again, but it's fairly consistent through the slides. Again, my pitch, so it's telling me I'm above monotone, which is a relief, but you can see how the pitch changes as I speak. So what we thought that would be really useful for is, I say, it's either the critical friend or it's something that learners can use to practice and to develop their confidence before they present to the class, or even perhaps an assembly part that they're delivering. It could be used, I think, as part of your formative assessment. We mentioned that critical friend idea, but I don't think it's the sort of thing we would be saying, print that sheet off and put that in it. I don't think we're going to make an assessment on learners based on the words per minute and asking them to up that by a few. And it's also worth considering, if you open your presentation in the desktop app, that might not be available in your school, depending on local authority settings, how learners log into the computer, but they can do it at home on their own device. What it will do is it will open up PowerPoint on their computer, and you're able to record you speaking over a presentation there. So again, we've got a wee bit of guidance on that on DigiLearn.Scot about how to use that to create perhaps lesson content, but your learners might want to use that very same tool to practice them speaking over a presentation. It's a wee bit different from recording themselves, say, on a phone or an iPad, where maybe they don't want to be on the video, so they can capture their voice and their points along with their slides, and that might be how you then assess it, rather than having to stand up in front of a classroom. Can note that can be challenging for some learners. And also, just to show as well, you'll see here, always use subtitles as an option under slideshow with PowerPoint Online. And if I start to present, you'll see I have the option here just to put on the subtitles, and they're not perfect. It will depend on the pace and how deliberately you speak, but that might be something you need to consider for some of your learners, whether you were presenting at an assembly to learners or if you were using it in the classroom. I think that might be challenging with a busy classroom, but you can see it's hearing me and it is captioning as I speak. So that is something that you can consider. And there's one last tool here, is the Present Live button. And what that does is, as I present it, learners are able, if they've got a device, you could scan that just now if you've got a mobile device to hand, and it will let you follow my presentation on your own device with your choice of subtitles. So someone mentioned captioning, captions on I think it was at YouTube or TV. With this, it means that if you scan that, you're able to follow my presentation live, but you can choose your own subtitles. So again, if that's a learner who speaks a different language, they can have that presented. And I'll just show a wee example of that. So once I start my slides as normal, I can speak, and hopefully on your device it's going to show you the captions in the language that you have chosen. So again, about accessibility, but that might be how your learners access the presentation or the text, and that could help their understanding.
George, just before you move on,
yep.
Could you just point out again, or just remind us where the dictation button sits?
Certainly.
Minutes.
Yep, on Office, if you open up a Word document, so if you're in Glow, just go for the whole bit. If I'm in Glow, depending on what you've saved to your Launchpad, I always go in through Teams. Once I've opened up Teams or Office 365, I've got the app selector in the top left corner. Once I choose Word, and once Word is open, there's a microphone button in the top banner. That might depend on your screen size, for example. So if it's not there, it will be under an ellipsis in the top right somewhere. So just depending on the size of your screen where that button sits exactly, but it is in the top right. It might be depending on your device. So again, in for example, your classroom desktop might not have a microphone attached, so that won't work. But any mobile device, laptop, Chromebook, iPad, tablet, mobile phone, those have all got microphones built in, and it's just about having the permission set for that. What we'd like to invite you to do, just as we come towards the end of that, if there are any questions at the end, happy to answer any of those. And I'll show you the DigiLearn site as well in just a wee second. But we'd like to invite you, as was mentioned at the start, to contribute those stories. So whatever you take away from these webinars, please do share them with us at the DigiLearn website. You can create a short blog post, or even just through the Twitter handles. please do share that with the digital and the literacy and English teams, and let us know how you're getting on with that practice in your classroom. We'd love to see examples of that where people are using these tools in their class and the change that's affected for your learners. If I can show you very quickly just the DigiLearn website, you'll see a longer URL at the top, but DigiLearn.Scot will take you to this site, and there's an opportunity here with this, your stories, your community, to upload your story and tell us how you're using digital learning and teaching for developing your literacy and English in your classroom. So please share away there. And just the last slide from me before I hand back to Julie is, it's worth considering as well, if you are implementing ideas like this, or you're planning to now go away and implement some of these ideas with your class or in your school, it's worth considering, if you haven't already, the Digital Schools Award for Scotland. It's got a framework on how to develop your school's policy and practice around digital learning and teaching. And even if you're going to go on away in the context of literacy and English and use those digital learning and teaching ideas to support your learners, you're already well on the way towards earning your Digital Schools Award Scotland. So it might be worth looking at that award. There's an evaluative framework that goes with it and helps you to understand where you are and where you need to go next with digital learning and teaching in your school. And if that's in a curricular area such as literacy and English, it's a great place to take it, and you might as well go through the awards process and end up with that lovely plaque and recognition of the hard work that you've put into that. So I would definitely suggest you have a look at the Digital Schools Award for Scotland, and again, the Digital Learning and Teaching team happy to help and support anyone with that. So that's everything from me.
George, can I just say there's a question? Are you able to do all of this on the iPad?
Yes. Some of the tools will look slightly different on the iPad. It depends on how you access it through the iPad. So with the iPad, there are for example, there's the Word app, which looks very different from what I've just showed you. But if you access it through your browser on the iPad and you go into Glow and then access Word online through the browser, it looks much more similar to what I've just shown you, but still slightly different. With the iPad, you can voice type anything. So if you open up, whether it's a Word document, Google Docs, or the Apple's own word processing document, is it Pages, I'm going to say? I don't use it. But your iPad will allow you to voice type on anything. So you can even put in the URL for a website by using your voice. And that's in the accessibility features in your iPad settings. It might be if it's set up already, if you triple tap the home button on your iPad, it will bring up accessibility options. And you can use the voice control to voice type anything in your iPad. So the Read Aloud again is built into the iPad, so you can have it read absolutely anything. So Immersive Reader is there in the Word app, but it looks a wee bit different from the version I've shown you, which is the online one. But your iPad will read absolutely anything to you. And as well, if I can just show very quickly, I'm using the new Edge browser. And if I go up to the ellipsis in the top right corner, hopefully most local authorities have Edge installed. There is an option to read aloud built in, so my web browser will actually read anything, any text on the screen at any point. So again, even if those features aren't in, say, Google Docs, for example, if you access it through Chrome, it will read whatever's on the page to you. For Google or G Suite users, if that's your local authority, there are third-party Chrome extensions that are available, such as Read and Write, that'll be up to your local authority which ones they've made available, but those are Chrome extensions, and those allow that screen reading that Immersive Reader does, but it's through a third-party app, so it's not linked directly to Glow, but that's up to your local authority. And again, about the PowerPoint, again, it looks slightly different on the iPad, but you get more features if you access that through the online version, so it's just going to depend with your iPad which version you're accessing. So on our Digital Skills YouTube channel, which I'll put a link into the team's site at the bottom, I've created a playlist here to support these webinar sessions. It's got some simple videos to give you kind of ideas here, like such as what is a text, or bringing poetry to life with graphics. So we'll cover more of that in the following webinar about creating texts, and still focusing on the kind of enjoyment and choice and how you respond to that. What I've also done is broken down, focusing more up the school and moving into secondary, perhaps thinking about how to use the tools within Word for writing, in particular, and really focusing in with the desktop app in particular. So again, the desktop apps from Office they've got even more features and functions than the online version. So you've almost got the mobile version, the online version, then the desktop version. They've all got slightly different feature sets just down to the way that the computer works, but there are features in there such as you can ink to the screen. So if you've got a touchscreen device, you can write on the screen and make notes, or highlight with your touch. You've got the option again of making notes there. You can add audio files using things like OneNote. So try to cover a few different bits here. There are also in the presentation that's already in the files and the Teams, but on this playlist I have linked to Mike Tholson from Microsoft's videos for how to use Immersive Reader, how to use dictation and voice, and how to use the presenter coach. So again, if you've missed that, you can go back and catch these short bite-sized videos on how to use those, or how those work. So that will support you with that as well. So there's quite a few videos to go through on that playlist. And again, what is a text? We probably answered most of that already, but just looking at, is that Netflix, YouTube, whatever other video on demand options, your news sites, and again, really thinking about how we use that in the classroom to make sure our learners are getting access to as wide a range of text as possible, particularly in a digital setting. And I'll add to this as well, we'll keep adding as we go, so as we come up to the next webinar, there'll be more video content in there as well to support that. So I'll share that link directly to the playlist in the Teams for you as well.
We're thinking about session 2, which takes place on Tuesday 17th of November. And we're going to be looking at digital tools which can support understanding, analysing and evaluating, strategies to support finding and using information online, and then creating text in a digital context. So lots more to come in session 2. And as I said earlier, that session 3 will be an interactive session.
Hopefully you found that very useful, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us, and for if you're watching the video recorded on YouTube, thanks again for taking the time, and do let us know how you get on applying some of these ideas with your learners. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank
George.
you.
Julie.